There is a candle in your home right now, maybe several, and there is a reasonable chance you have never thought of it as something that could kill you. It sits there, it smells nice, it flickers, it feels domestic, safe even. But a candle is an open flame burning inside a building filled with flammable materials, and when the conditions are right, it becomes something genuinely dangerous very quickly. In the United States alone, candles start around 7,600 house fires every year. That's 21 fires per day. They kill roughly 81 people annually and injure nearly 700 more. And those are just the fire numbers. That doesn't include what's happening to your lungs every single time you light one. Because there are actually two ways a candle can kill you, and most people only think about one of them. The fire risk is obvious. The chemical risk is almost completely invisible. And in some ways, the invisible one should concern you more, because it's happening right now, in ways you cannot see or smell or notice until the damage is already done. But before we get into the chemistry, let's understand the fire side properly. Because it's not as simple as flame plus curtain equals disaster. The mechanics of how candles cause fires are worth understanding, because once you see the chain of events, you'll realize how easily it triggers. A candle flame heats the wax directly beneath it, melting it into liquid. Under normal conditions, that liquid wax is drawn up the wick and burned. But if the flame gets too large, or the candle burns too long, more wax melts than the flame can consume. You get pooling. Hot liquid wax can drip down the side of the candle. If that liquid catches a surface, if it reaches paper or fabric or a wooden shelf, you have a fire starter that you've essentially placed there yourself, slowly dripping over the course of an evening. 3 out of every 5 candle fires start because something flammable was too close to the flame. Furniture, curtains, bedding, holiday decorations. That percentage should tell you something. The most common candle fire isn't a catastrophic accident. It's a predictable one. An item that was always too close, a flame that burned just long enough to bridge the gap. And then there's the category that is even harder to excuse. 40% of all candle fire deaths happen in the bedroom. Falling asleep with a candle still burning is a factor in 11% of all home candle fires, and 30% of those incidents result in a fatality. Not injury, a fatality. Someone lit a candle, fell asleep, and did not wake up. Now, none of that requires special conditions or unusual circumstances. It requires a tired person and a burning candle on a nightstand. That's it. And this is why the bedroom number is so striking. It's not that bedrooms are especially flammable compared to kitchens or living rooms. It's that bedrooms are where humans lose consciousness while the flame keeps burning. The fire doesn't need you to make a mistake in the moment. It just needs you to stop watching. December is, statistically, the worst month for candle fires. January is the second worst. If you're burning candles for ambiance during winter months, during the holidays, during the exact time of year when every surface in a home is covered in dried out pine, paper wrapping, fabric decorations, you are operating in the highest risk environment of the entire year, and most people have no idea. That's the fire risk, and it's where most videos on this topic stop. If you want the rest of these breakdowns before they show up in your feed, subscribe, because the fire risk isn't even the more dangerous half of this story. So what's actually happening when a candle burns? Because understanding combustion is where the story gets more complicated and more alarming. A candle flame is burning paraffin wax in most cases, which is a petroleum derivative. Combustion of paraffin produces carbon dioxide and water vapor in a clean, complete burn. But candle flames are not always burning cleanly. When the flame flickers, when the wick is too long, when there's a draft, combustion becomes incomplete. And incomplete combustion produces carbon monoxide, soot, and an array of ultrafine particles that have no business being in your respiratory system. Carbon monoxide is the one most people recognize. Colorless, odorless, produced by any incomplete combustion. It binds to hemoglobin in your blood with roughly 200 times more affinity than oxygen does. Your blood cells pick it up instead of oxygen and carry it throughout your body. The result is cellular suffocation. A single candle in a well-ventilated room is unlikely to produce lethal concentrations of carbon monoxide. But add several candles in a small, poorly ventilated space, keep them burning for hours, and the levels start to climb into ranges that cause symptoms. Headaches, dizziness, nausea, none of which feel obviously chemical. They feel like you're tired, or that the room is too warm. The relationship between exposure time and symptom onset is not random. Research has documented that regular, Prolonged exposure to carbon monoxide from candles produces a cumulative effect. People who burn multiple candles daily in bedrooms or small enclosed spaces report chronic low-level headaches that resolve only when candle use stops. The insidious nature of this exposure is that it develops gradually, without obvious cause and effect signaling. The individual attributes the headache to stress, lack of sleep, or seasonal changes. They never consider the candle burning in the background of their evening routine as the contributing factor. Here's the thing about soot. When a candle produces visible black smoke, or even when it flickers and you can see it guttering, it's emitting combustion particles at a dramatically elevated rate. Studies have shown that a flickering candle emits between 30 and 70 times as many carbon particles as a candle burning steadily. 30 to 70 times. The particle size matters enormously here. These aren't particles you can see floating in a room. They are ultrafine, small enough to pass directly through the tiny hairs and mucus that line your airways and filter out larger irritants. They go straight into the deeper structures of your lungs. And once they're there, they cause inflammation. They trigger immune responses, and for people who already have asthma or chronic lung disease, they can set off an acute attack in a room that everyone else in that room would describe as perfectly comfortable. Soot accumulation in homes burning candles regularly creates a visible residue that most people never attribute to their source. Fine black deposits appear on ceiling corners, around light fixtures, and on walls above candles. This isn't aesthetic damage alone. The same particles settling on surfaces are simultaneously settling in lung tissue. The visible pollution is simply the indicator that invisible pollution has been occurring. Once you start looking for it, once you know to examine your ceilings and walls, the evidence becomes obvious, and it becomes much harder to view the candle as purely benign. This brings us to what is arguably the most overlooked hazard in the entire conversation: volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. A burning candle, particularly a scented one, releases a range of organic chemical compounds into the air of your room. These include formaldehyde, benzene, toluene, acetaldehyde, and others depending on the fragrance compounds and wax type involved. Formaldehyde is a known carcinogen. Benzene is also a known carcinogen. These aren't hypothetical chemicals conjured from extreme laboratory conditions. They're produced during normal candle combustion in normal homes. Paraffin candles tend to produce higher concentrations of these compounds than soy or beeswax alternatives, because paraffin is a petroleum product and its combustion chemistry reflects that. But here's the important qualifier: no candle is clean. Even beeswax, even soy, even candles marketed specifically as non-toxic produce particulate matter and combustion byproducts during normal burning. The difference between wax types is a matter of degree, not category. You are still burning something inside your home, and burning things produce products of combustion. That is not avoidable. It's physics. Scented candles add another layer. The fragrance compounds in a scented candle, synthetic or natural, are volatile by design. That's how you smell them. They evaporate from the hot wax and disperse into the air. Some of those compounds are benign. Others, when subjected to the heat of combustion, break down into secondary chemicals that are more irritating or more harmful than the original fragrance compound. This is why the complaint profile for people who are sensitive to candle emissions, headaches, throat irritation, eye irritation, mild respiratory symptoms, matches the complaint profile for low-level VOC exposure rather than anything that smells obviously toxic. There's no warning signal. It smells like lavender or vanilla. It just also happens to be producing benzene. And there's a specific population for whom this matters enormously: people with asthma, with COPD, with cardiovascular disease, with any pre-existing respiratory or circulatory condition. For a healthy adult in a well-ventilated room, burning one candle occasionally, the health risk from emissions is low. That framing gets used to dismiss the concern entirely. But the same health risk for someone with compromised airways or a weakened cardiovascular system is genuinely significant. And the failure mode there isn't a dramatic visible event, it's cumulative exposure. It's inflammation building slowly over repeated use. It's a condition worsening in a way that never gets attributed to the candles. Before the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission banned lead-core wicks in 2003, there was an additional hazard that makes the modern conversation about VOCs look relatively tame. Lead-cored wicks were used to keep wicks stiff and upright during burning. The problem is that burning a lead-core wick releases lead particles into the air of the room, not as a byproduct of some unusual condition, just as a normal consequence of using the product as designed. Laboratory measurements found that lead core candles could emit up to 2,200 micrograms of lead per hour during normal burning. There is no safe level of lead exposure for children. Lead accumulates in the body and causes neurological damage, developmental delays, learning impairments, and behavioral problems. And this was happening in living rooms, in nurseries, in homes where candles were just a normal part of the atmosphere. The ban in the United States addressed domestic production and sale, but candles continue to be manufactured in countries where no equivalent restriction exists, and they enter the market through import channels, gift shops, dollar stores, online retailers. You cannot tell by looking at a wick whether it contains lead. There is no visual indicator, no smoke signature, no smell difference. Professional laboratory analysis is the only way to determine whether a wick has a lead core. The CPSC ban reduced the problem significantly, but it did not eliminate it. And most people have no idea the problem ever existed, let alone that imported candles may still carry it. So what does a practical response to all of this look like? The fire risks have straightforward answers. Never leave a burning candle unattended. Keep the burn time under 4 hours at a stretch. Keep candles away from anything flammable and at least 3 inches apart from each other if you're burning multiple. Never burn one in a bedroom if there is any chance you'll fall asleep. Keep wicks trimmed to about a 1/4 inch because a longer wick produces a larger, less stable flame and dramatically more soot. Drafts are dangerous too. A candle near an open window or a running fan isn't romantic. It's a fire waiting to find something to catch. For the emissions issue, ventilation is the primary tool. A room with reasonable airflow dilutes combustion products before they concentrate to problematic levels. Choosing beeswax or soy candles over paraffin reduces, though does not eliminate, the VOC load. Avoiding heavily synthetic fragrances matters, particularly if anyone in the household already has respiratory issues. A candle that smells strongly across the entire room from cold, before it's even lit, is releasing fragrance compounds at room temperature and will release them at much higher rates during combustion. And if you're burning candles regularly in a small, poorly ventilated space, and you've been experiencing headaches or mild throat irritation, and you haven't connected those two things, it may be worth making that connection now.